Thanks for chatting with me today, Jenny. Look, the purpose of today's session is really just to give our investors in the Childcare Fund a bit more of an insight into some of our operators. And I understand, you know, your centre with us is one of three that you operate. It's the Three Trees Learning in Rolleston and Christchurch, and that's one of the star performers of our fund. And you know, you run at a very high occupancy, and I understand that you have a waiting list there. Can you perhaps give us a bit of an insight as to you know, tell us a little bit about Three Trees as a business, and what has made the difference for you to make that centre successful?
I guess we started from the very early stages, looking for a specific piece of land. We saw a need in the area, in the township, that came about when I was looking for a centre for my own children to come to. I was moving them from my centre out in North Canterbury, and so I didn't feel like anything quite met the needs of what I was looking for as a parent. So I guess when I didn't find what I was looking for, I really wanted to create something, and I thought there was a real opportunity and a real demand within Rolleston, being one of the fastest growing areas in the Southern Hemisphere. The population growth is pretty staggering out here, so and it continues to grow. We have around 10 subdivisions now that we didn't know about actually before we built. 10 subdivisions around us being built. And so I guess we knew there was a lot of land there, but we didn't realise how fast it was going to grow. So we were looking for something central, something that had a park-like outlook, and hence we found Foster Park and thought this would be the perfect prime location, close to the college that was going to be built, 2 minutes down from the destination playground that is opposite the aquatic centre. The other thing we find is that we've built quite a large centre, thinking in terms of trying to future-proof.
Right. Why do you think there's been such a increase in demand for quality, you know, early learning centres in New Zealand?
I think there's two different perspectives you can take here. As a teacher, I believe that, you know, you can look at it from one perspective where you say, oh, this isn't fair, these centres are coming in, they're larger, they can offer more, etc. And they're going this thing and the next thing. I think the difference is if you're actually not offering free hours and you're not offering, you know, free this, free that, and you actually are charging your parents what they are receiving, they're actually happy to pay for it. In a place where the teaching team get on really well, and then there's that, I don't know what you'd call it, I don't know, there's that culture of respect, and that you are actually growing as a teacher and as a team. And I think there's other elements, like we provide nappies and cooked meals by a qualified chef. We also have a housekeeper. So there's a whole lot of extras that we do add in that help support the teachers in the role that they do.
This year so far, it's been an interesting year for all of us. How has the events of this year affected Three Trees Learning in Rolleston, and how have you managed to deal with it as well as you have?
For Three Trees, we've actually got through it really quite well, and that's again thanks to a really great team. We've got a really good management team in place that have been well supported. I live in the community, so that makes a huge difference too. So I'm able to chip in when I can, but the management team is really supportive to the rest of the teaching team and support services. So, you know, we were able to quickly put things into place and use delegation as a really good tool to make sure and ensure that our families were catered to during lockdown. We did a lot of the online learning. Some teachers were doing videos. Some were doing Zoom sessions with their babies who are under 1 year of age, because they didn't want to be forgotten. So just the baby alone hearing the teacher's voice is enough for them to you know, put a smile on their face And so that's quite nice just to have that interaction still going. And it was determined by the families and the teachers as to their relationship and how much they wanted to interact. But it was there if they wanted it, which was the main thing. We didn't charge through lockdown. Luckily, we did have pandemic insurance, which was some relief. It doesn't cover everything, and the wages subsidy was amazing as well. Who knows where anyone would be without the wages subsidy. But I do think the communication alone and the support given was mostly good.
I'll just move on to government funding quickly. I mean, government funding is it's a significant portion of the revenue of each centre. I see government funding is set to increase again in January. What's your view of government funding? Firstly, do you think it will always be there? And how does that bode for the sector?
I do think it will always be there, and the reason behind that is because you don't have an economy without childcare and education. As we all know, education and health are the backbone of our country. But the funding should always be there in one way or another. I don't believe that the government will be going back to where they've come from. They failed dramatically trying to have ECE and run that within the country. We had to be pre-approved as an ECE provider to be able to run a centre. So that basically takes out a lot of developers from just developing centres willy-nilly and getting anyone into a centre to run it. They'll be looking at the background of the person who will be running it. Do they live locally? Do they have an invested interest? Do they have an ECE or teaching educational background? Do they run services already successfully? Are those services financially secure and stable? Do they have the feasibility studies to back up the need and the demand in the area? So you have to be able to prove all of that before they'll sign you off. And that's even before you go for your resource consent.
Just for the benefit of some of our investors, the government incentivises a centre to employ qualified teachers by increasing the level of funding based on how many qualified teachers you have. I know at your centres you have largely qualified teachers. And how important do you think it is to have qualified teachers teaching 2- and 3-year-olds?
Absolutely critical. They have an understanding of behaviour in children and their developmental milestones. There's a lot of research and development around, Nathan Wallace talks about the 1,000 birthdays in a child's life and how critical they are.
Jenny, I'm conscious of time. I'm gonna have to wrap it up, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. That's been really useful. So I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you.